Good afternoon, everyone. I see that people are still joining. We'll wait just another minute here before we get started. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about call handling practices that improve customer experience. Really appreciate you spending a half hour of your valuable time with us. It's my hope by the end of the half hour you'll gain some insights that will get you thinking about possible changes that you could make. I'm Pam Havens. I'm a senior manager on the account management team here at SQM. I'm located in our Coeur d'Alene, Idaho office. I've been here for over 6.5 years, and prior to working here, I have 14 years of contact center management experience. A few housekeeping items. Everyone will be in listen-only mode. You can input any questions into the dashboard throughout. At the end, if we have any time, we will address them. Otherwise, we'll definitely follow up with you later with answers. This presentation is available in the handout section right now, and as well, a recording will be available afterwards. So who's SQM Group? Our mission is to help organizations improve their customer and employee experience performance, one individual at a time. So one individual at a time, we gather feedback from individual customers who've had experiences with organizations, and we help organizations improve their customer performance and their employee satisfaction by measuring down to an individual CSR level, so you can help improve your CSR's performance and satisfaction. We do market research, benchmarking, consulting, and we have an awards program both for best practices where organizations can share their practices that have helped improve customer experience, and as well as awarding for actual voice of the customer performance results. A lot of facts here on this screen. I won't read through all of them, but we do over 1.5 million customer surveys annually with customers who have contacted an organization, whether they've talked directly with people in a call center or they've used other contact channels such as email, self-serve on the website, self-serve on an IVR or an automated phone system. We gather benchmarking data for over 500 contact centers a year and do business in countries around the globe, although the majority is in the U.S. and Canada. So why are we here today? Smart organizations listen to the voice of the customer, and they want to provide a world-class customer experience. World-class measure via SQM is basically, if we're talking about an individual contact, such as a phone call, a world-class call is resolved and the customer is very satisfied with the representative and very satisfied with the contact center. If you're measuring at a call center level, your world-class goal is to have at least 80% FCR, or first contact, first call resolution. How CSRs handle calls is really key to customer satisfaction and perception of resolution. Today we're going to talk about the 4 key moments of truth that matter most to customers, and we know this through the feedback that they tell us. The customer experience essentials that customers want CSRs to demonstrate on every call. By demonstrating those behaviors, that's how customers understand that the CSR cares about them and has resolved their issue. how to shift from a service level focus to a customer experience performance focus. And we'll talk about several best practices for key call handling metrics. So first of all, let's build the case for why should we improve resolution and FCR. How does this impact customer experience? Overwhelmingly, customers tell us when we ask about what's their priority when they are contacting an organization, their priority is get that inquiry resolved in one call. Customers are only calling a call center or contacting an organization because they have something they need help with, something they don't know how to do, or it's a problem, and their time is valuable. They want to call in and get it taken care of. In SQM's research, we find that overwhelmingly contact resolution is the leading metric. There's a lot of different metrics we can use to measure our customer experience and our performance as an organization. But like I said, customers are contacting you because they need resolution. And we find that that's the leading metric. And if you achieve that, and hopefully in one call or one contact, then all of the other metrics will follow. You're going to have higher CSAT. You're going to have a great customer experience with your organization, higher net promoter scores, etc. Top 5 benefits of improving customer experience. First of all, we find for 1% improvement in FCR, there's a corresponding 1% improvement in customer satisfaction. As well, if your employees are handling fewer customers who are upset, fewer people who had to call in multiple times with complex issues that they're frustrated by, it makes your employees' job more pleasant and fulfilling. They can more efficiently handle and have positive interactions with customers. So your ESAT can go up from 1% to 5%. And bottom line, you've got the dollars. For every 1% improvement in FCR, you reduce your operating costs by 1%. And for the average contact center out there, that's $286,000 a year. That's a big savings for just a 1% improvement in FCR. When we look at FCR, contact resolution, FCR, the average contact center is at about a 72% FCR, which means approximately 3 out of 10 people have to call back again. That's 30% of people that didn't want to have to call back again. Additional calls, each time someone has to call back again, CSAT drops by 15%. That's a significant impact. And the CSR is the source of error per the customer's perspective when they say what went wrong, why they had to call back again. In at least 1 out of 3 of those non-FCR customers, and 94% of those reasons are due to a lack of call handling skills and not just a lack of soft skills such as politeness or friendliness. Basically, you could have the nicest CSR in the world, most polite, friendly, helpful person, but if they're not effective in resolving, if they don't know how to resolve issues or properly communicate that, then CSAT will be affected. While when you're looking at a CSR level, they should be held accountable to call resolution, each individual can have a large impact on the overall FCR of your contact center. If you rank all of your reps by their CSAT, there's a 15% difference in FCR results between the top 15% of representatives and the bottom 15% of representatives. So that between 64% FCR and 76%, that's a large impact to your overall customer experience. And as we've mentioned, operating costs for your contact center. It doesn't have to be expensive to run a world-class contact center. We find on average that the average salary for a CSR in a world-class center is only about $870 higher per year than an average contact center. But because world-class CSRs resolve more, on average take more calls, and fewer customers have to call back, overall operating costs will be significantly less. SQM recommends that rather than looking at the cost per call, which most call centers do, we'd suggest you calculate the cost per call resolution. So while your average cost per call might be $10.33, using as an example, but if the customer had to call back twice, really the cost for that call resolution was $21, right? Because it took them 2 calls. So you can't just look at your cost per call, because if all of your customers are calling back 3 times, then you have an overall very large operating cost. In fact, cost per call resolution is 23% higher for the worst performing CSRs than the best. So again, when you look at that cost to resolve a customer's issue, for the best performing CSRs, about $12 on average, almost $15 for the worst performing CSRs. So you see the benefits of improving your customer experience. What are some of the changes that you could make? When it comes to call handling, we recommend that you make a shift from focusing on those classic service level metrics to focusing on an FCR and call resolution goal for your representatives. SQM's research finds that if you're looking at average speed of answer, we find that customers are very forgiving for up to 2 minutes of hold time before getting to a representative, as long as their call is resolved. That's not going to impact CSAT at all. You'll want to communicate clearly to CSRs that their goal is to resolve calls. Do whatever it takes to be an advocate for that customer. Don't have them focus on calls that are waiting and how fast they're getting on and off of calls. You want to enable them to achieve call resolution goals by not giving them those targets at all. If average handling time is their metric, that pushes them to get off the call quickly. Their focus is going to be, okay, yeah, I answered your question, thank you, goodbye, rather than thinking through the whole situation and doing whatever it takes to take care of that issue for that customer. So once you change that metric, it changes the whole picture of how your call center works. Naturally, contact centers will still have to watch their overall call metrics from a workforce management perspective and for budgeting, and customer time is very valuable. But also many companies have SLAs with their clients perhaps, so they have to be measured on their metrics such as average handling time or average speed of answer. But these metrics should not be given to the CSRs. If the CSRs are focusing on resolution, fewer people will be calling back, and then those call metrics will fall into line. Another best practice is using a concierge service. So what is that? It's similar to in the whole hotel industry. Basically, it means getting the customer out of the middle, not expecting them to take the burden of getting their issue resolved, but taking it on, the CSR taking it on themselves, not assigning homework, but making calls on behalf of the customer to either other departments that are needed to help in resolution or to outside organizations. Perhaps you have to call to their bank for information or to the doctor's office for information. The calls can be made ideally while the customer is on the line, so you're making a 3-way call, but it's on their behalf and during that phone transaction, so that ideally at the end of the call, everything's been done to get the wheels in motion to get the issue resolved, and now the customer doesn't have to afterwards go and take other actions, call somewhere else, and call you back again. Again, if you remove the binding of worrying about average handling time and encourage CSRs to do what it takes, you're going to have higher resolution and fewer callbacks. You want to recognize CSRs for providing good concierge service, so it's something that they take pride in. They should be held accountable for their CSAT and their call resolution performance. Also, part of concierge concept is, educating customers when possible, for instance, on how to use self-service channels to get information, such as on the website. And you should also help educate your CSRs on how internal departmental partners work? What are their processes? What are their timelines? How do you work with those departments to get resolution for customers? When CSRs have this concierge, go the extra mile attitude to resolve the customer's call, even though every call won't necessarily need you to use this concierge service, that attitude is going to be transferred to other call types. A lot of contact centers' first thought is, oh, wow, we can't do that. That would just be too expensive. But as you can see by this analysis, for contact centers that use concierge service, using that cost per call resolution model, it comes out to be actually slightly lower than an average cost per call resolution for a peer in the same industry that doesn't use concierge service. Some other key practices tied to call handling are the use of hold, transfers. When these are done, the key is that, number one, they are for the purpose of resolving the call, and that they're done as seamlessly as possible for the customer. So when we look at hold practices, the average customer 45% of the time says they were put on hold. We find the world-class contact center target is 20% or less. And we also see, typically, when a call is put on hold, FCR is 19% lower. So again, there's real incentive to reduce having to use hold, but more importantly, given there will be need for hold time, how do you do it? Customers prefer that you use a live hold. Live hold is that the CSR is still on the line, so they let the customer know, I'm going to be quiet for a bit here while I'm working on this or while I'm looking up information for you, but I'm still here. So if at any point you can think of any questions or more information for me, please just speak to me. They keep the customer informed on how long the task will take, but they're still on the line. So benefits to this are the customer can still communicate. So they might come up with key information that they forgot to say originally, which will now help the CSR more effectively handle the inquiry. Also, the customer doesn't have that worry of, I'm on hold. It's been a while. I hope I haven't been abandoned. Are they coming back? So it really helps with the smoothness of the transaction and the kind of the rapport that the customer can have with the CSR, that they haven't been left to their own. And also, we find that generally average handling time is lower when you use a live hold, because CSRs tend to work a little faster to process the information because they maybe feel a little more pressure to resolve the call more quickly because the customer is still right there. Transferring practices. So average contact center, 19% of calls are transferred. Again, the key is, if you're transferring, are you transferring to the place that is going to get resolution for the customer, and are you doing it seamlessly? When calls are transferred, FCR we find is about 14% lower. Naturally, most organizations understand, if at all possible, I should do a warm transfer, so you're not just cold dropping them into another queue. But beyond that, we recommend an extra level of warm transfer service, and that is, rather than the first representative saying, calling the second representative and saying, hi, Pam, I have Mrs. Smith on hold, here's what happened, blah, 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 and then, okay, I'm going to put her on the line now, and then connecting them. We'd recommend that the three of them be on the line at the same time as the first representative explains to the second representative what the situation is. That way, the customer, first of all, it helps demonstrate that they were listened to and cared for. And second of all, it really helps with that seamless experience, because the customer doesn't have to start all over again and re-explain themselves. And of course, as the customer listens, then they can, if they think of supplemental information, they can pass it on to the second CSR, but it makes the overall transaction much more efficient. And generally, you'll probably, again, if you are looking as an organization watching your average handling time, you probably are going to find you're going to have shorter handling time with a warm transfer, because usually CSRs can more succinctly get to the point, explain the situation quicker than the customer might do it. Also, definitely, cold transfers, don't want to do that, because whenever that's done, the customer is much more likely to consider that they made 2 calls, even though they technically only called in 1 time. Another best practice is to have a call summarization and wrap-up process. So basically to have a script that the CSRs can ask each caller at the end of each call. So at the end of the call, they're going to summarize what you've talked about, what steps were taken, and what are the next steps. And they're going to actually consistently ask this question of the customer. Something like, Mrs. Smith, it's been my pleasure to serve you today. Did I resolve the reason for your call? By asking that question, it gets the customer thinking about resolution. So they're going to think, did she resolve it? Yeah, I guess she did. And now and they say, yes, nope, you took care of it for me. If the customer does happen to get a survey call later, they're probably more likely to say, yes, she resolved it, because they've already decided that answer to that question during the phone call. Of course, key thing is it gives the CSR the opportunity, if the customer says, no, actually you didn't, I still need to know this, or, they can express more information and now give that CSR a second chance to actually more fully resolve or address more information, so that the customer does really understand and feel that their call was resolved. A lot of world-class contact centers make use of their technology to route calls to the most suitable CSR rather than simply the next available CSR. You determine, who's the suitable CSR by utilizing information about who's calling and why they're calling. So using information from your CRM, from your IVR in the options that the customer selected up front, and get them to a rep, the next available rep, who has that necessary skill level to resolve their call. Many call centers do use generalist CSR call handling practices, but in that case, they're not specifically matched to customer needs. Our research shows that in most cases, using specialized CSR skill sets to handle specific call types, you do have a higher CX performance for FCR than contact centers that use the generalist CSRs. Different types of call classifications that you could use that can benefit from specialized routing. Of course, number one, we're talking about repeat calls. So definitely if you can see that customer has a open case or open trouble ticket, or they're calling back within 5 days of their previous call, those can be flagged and routed to a specialized CSR or your highest performing CSRs, who can now provide appropriate status and final resolution. You could also look at having special queues for your new customers, because we found that new customers in general have a lot more questions and situations that arise and place multiple calls in the first 90 days of their association with your organization. So it can be a more expedient way to work with them by identifying them in the CRM and then routing them to CSRs that are well trained in the types of issues new customers have. You could also route high value customers, or perhaps customers that you see are in default in their billing status. The call can directly route them to the group responsible for working with them for collections and payment arrangements, as well as if your products and services if you're in a highly competitive market, you may want to add a cancel service option to your upfront IVR that now front ends that customer's call to the retention team in your call center. Now we come to the heart of a call center interaction, and that is that you have a person on the phone who's calling you and is now talking with another person. Bottom line, what CSRs say and how they say it are critical elements that affect the customer satisfaction and their perception of call resolution. On the phone, you don't have body language. The CSR's voice and the words they use are what convey to the customer the CSR's feelings and emotions. SQM recommends that CSRs and supervisors be trained in call resolution techniques, and that's our call resolution delivery model. Why should you train them on this? As we mentioned before, about 37% of calls that are unresolved, the CSR is that source of error from the customer's perspective. And when a call is unresolved, 40% of those customers feel that the CSR could have done more to resolve the call. When a customer is calling into your contact center, 93% of them expect that the CSR will resolve their call. So yeah, there's some people that call in and more they realize they have a complex situation. It might not be resolved on the spot, but in general, 93% of people are expecting resolution. And of course, customers form their impression of the contact center experience and thus how they feel about the organization as a whole within seconds of reaching the CSR. There's really no second chance to make a positive first impression. SQM has collected feedback from millions of customers, and we've categorized open-ended comments that customers give about their satisfaction. Why are they very satisfied, or why are they very dissatisfied with the contact center and the CSR, as well as comments about why things weren't resolved the first time. And we've categorized it down into these 4 key moments of truth that mean something to the customer to help them understand that resolution occurred and helps influence their satisfaction with your organization. CSRs and supervisors should do everything in their power to resolve a customer's call. Basically, CSRs should take ownership and have the attitude of being an advocate for the customer. Customers aren't experts. Usually they're calling in because it's something they really don't know about. And depending on the industry you're in, things can be very complex. And who knows what's going on in that person's life. They could be going through life and death, financial or health matters. And to reach a person who cares about them, who listens to them, and who takes ownership to resolve their issue and help guide them through that situation means the world to customers. CSRs can be trained to use very specific word choices and phrases that help illustrate to the customer that these concepts are being used. I'd like to talk specifically about Resolve Me. So of the open-ended comments that people make about their satisfaction with the CSR, about 30% of them, whether they're positive or negative, are about resolution. So that ties into what we've said, that resolution is that key measure. But resolution is in the eye of the beholder. For the same situation, one person might say, oh, yep, she resolved it, because they believe that the CSR has taken the steps that are necessary and it's going to happen. Another customer would say, no, they haven't resolved it yet, because that next step hasn't happened yet. For instance, let's say their billing statement needed to be corrected. So they haven't gotten that new statement yet. They say no. And the third person is going to go, well, I'm not sure if it was resolved because she still has to do this. So as I said, resolution is really in the eye of the beholder. So what your CSRs say to customers makes a huge impact in how if the customer really feels or understands that it was resolved. Key thing is, are they stating things with confidence? If they're not, if they're being hesitant about what's happening or timelines, what's going to happen? The customer is going to call back to check status. Also, everybody has those scenarios that aren't resolved on the spot. There are follow-up actions that are needed. Yet, if you rank all of your representatives in their call resolution performance order, you're going to find you have representatives who are performing at perhaps 100% resolution level per the voice of the customer feedback that they get. And you have other reps that are maybe down at 60%. What's the difference? They're taking the same calls. Everybody has those scenarios that aren't ideal. They can't do what the customer wants, or there's follow-up actions needed. So what's the difference? It's what they're saying and how they're saying it. We have a lot of questions here. If you'd like to self-analyze to identify areas for improvement within your organization, here's a list of great questions. I'm not going to read through them because, boy, has the time flown. But as we said, this will be in the presentation that you can receive. And just to finish it up, I wanted to refer you to a best practice winner. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City was our winner for last year for the call handling best practice. And it's a phenomenal story. You can read it on our website. Mindy Rubio, one of their directors, presented their story at our conference 2 weeks ago, and a lot of people were really inspired by it. But what they did was they found that they had representatives who were very technically skilled, and that's how they had trained them to be. You know, they were doing what they were trained to do, but when they actually listened to phone calls and thought of things from the customer's perspective, you know, why did that customer say it wasn't resolved when I actually resolved it? They really saw that what was happening was they weren't making a connection with their customers. So, you know, a customer would call in, maybe pour out their heart about a situation that was happening, and the rep would get straight into business and authenticate them to move forward with resolving their issue. So it's a great story. I encourage you to read it. Wow, it's 12:30. Thanks for listening, everyone. Again, really appreciate your time. SQM would love to hear from you. If you have any follow-up questions, contact us at headquarters, or if you're a current client, please reach out to your account manager. Thank you again. Have a great day.